Okay, so previously in the classes we've discussed about regulatory frameworks of different agencies. We in the last class we talked about different types of applications that are being submitted to get the drug approval. Today we will be covering the CTD modules. When we talked about, INDA applications, NDA applications, BLA, and all these applications, there's a certain format or documentation that needs to be submitted to the regulatory bodies when you're submitting the applications. Okay, it's not just an application form that needs to be submitted. There are a lot of documents that are submitted along with the application form to support that application. Okay, so when we talked about INDA, there were a lot of forms that we discussed, form 356H, and a lot of other forms that needs to be submitted. But apart from those forms, there are a lot of other documentation that goes into supporting that application. And today we are going to talk about those documents that are being submitted in that dossier. Okay, so that we'll be discussing about two different types of documentation. The first one would be your common technical documents, and the second one would be your ECTD. So when we'll talk about common technical documents, you need to understand that all the common technical documents previously were submitted as a hard copy to the regulatory body, but because it was time consuming and was in paper format, it was moved towards ECTD. ECTD is basically your electronic platform of submitting the common technical document in a standardized format so that it's time efficient and it's harmonized through a lot of regulatory bodies. Okay, so first what we are going to take up is your common technical document. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Just give a thumbs up to make sure that I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible, Priyanshi.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start with common technical documents and the electronic common technical documents. In common technical document, we will be exploring the structure, the components, and example of the common technical document essential for drug submission. And in ECTD, we will talk about the advantages of the ECTD format as compared to the CTD documents and how it is implemented in the modern regulatory submissions. Okay. So, what is your common technical document? The common technical document is an internationally agreed upon format for the submission of applications to the regulatory authorities for the approval of medicine. I've also mentioned definition here, which says that it is a standardized format for the regulatory submissions in the pharmaceutical industry, facilitating the review process for drug approvals. So, when we are discussing all these points, please understand that ECTD is an electronic way of submitting your common technical document, and when we just talk about CTD is it's a paper format of submitting the document. Okay, why is CTD important in regulatory submissions? So before the CTD was there, pharmaceutical companies had to prepare so providing a common and harmonized structure for submissions across ICH regions like United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, and others who adopted CTD. India has yet to adapt to the CTD form. It has been using CTD for a very long time now. So CTD streamlines the submission process, ensures consistency across regions, and simplifies the. Okay, Saeed. Am I audible now? Okay, so CTD is basically important. I'll repeat again the importance of CTD. So, before CTD came into practice, pharmaceutical companies had to, like prepare a lot of different formats for each country and region, which was time consuming, costly, and error prone. Therefore, the CTD format helped solve this problem by providing a common harmonized structure for submission across ICH regions. ICH regions include your US, FDA, Europe, EMA, Japan, PMDA, and Health Canada, along with TGA and others who adopted to the CTD format. Okay, so all in all, it is streamlining the submission process, ensuring the consistency across regions, and simplifying the documentation required for drug approval applications. Okay, who developed CTD? Okay, first question. So it was developed by International Council of Harmonization. Uh, to harmonize the regulatory requirements of different region, including your stringent bodies. Okay, so when we talk about the structure of the CTD, there's basically five modules that a CTD is divided into: module one, two, three, four, and five. So module one is basically your regional administrative information. It is not harmonized and it varies by region. Module 2 is your overview and summaries of quality, non-clinical and clinical data that we are going to submit in Module 3 to Module 5. Module 3 is your quality, which talks about chemistry, manufacturing, and controls, basically CMC. CMC is the um, core regulatory part around which a lot of things evolve. Then fourth is your non-clinical study reports, which will talk about pharmacology and toxicology and clinical and trials done on animals. And lastly is your module 5, which is your clinical study reports, which will talk about studies done on human subjects, the efficacy and safety of that drug on human subjects. Okay. Only module 2 to module 5 are harmonized globally, and module 1 must be tailored to each region's regulatory requirement. Example, FDA and TGA. We will take up a comparative study between how FDA's module 1 differ from TGA's module 1. What are the different components of FDA module 1 and TGA module 1 in the later part of this session. Now I hope the overview of what CTD basically is clear to you. We'll take up each module separately after we discuss what eCTD is. This is again an overview of Module 1. Like I told you, Module 1 is administrative and prescribing information, which encompasses country specific information, including application forms, cover letters, and prescribing information tailored to regional regulatory requirements. These are your Module 3, 4, and 5. Just read through them again, and then we'll talk about electronic common technical document and how is it different from common technical document. Okay, so I'll just read this for you. Module 3 is basically your quality reports and quality data, which covers comprehensive details on chemistry, manufacturing, and control of the drugs, including information on drug substance. We talk about the APIs and drug product, which is the finished product, along with the stability studies and packaging. Non-clinical study reports will include extensive reports for animal studies on pharmacology, kinetics, toxicology, safety evaluations, demonstrating the drug's preclinical safety profile. Okay, and clinical study reports will contain clinical trial data, including study protocols, statistical analysis, reports, and adverse event reporting showcasing the drug's efficacy and safety in human subjects. Okay, let's jump to eCTD now. We will talk about individual modules after we establish the difference between CTD and eCTD, so it becomes easier for you to understand where and when that module is being talked about. So an eCTD is an electronic version of the CTD. It maintains the same structure and content as the paper-based CTD, but adds important electronic components that make regulatory submission, review, and life cycle management far more efficient. Okay, it's it's basically the same as the CTD except for the electronic elements that it adds, which helps in easier regulatory submissions, review, and life cycle management for which are far more efficient than a paper-based CTD. Okay, as it enables electronic filing of documents in a standardized format, enhancing efficiency and reducing submission error. It was designed to facilitate the regulatory submission process. The ECTD therefore simplifies the interaction between a drug sponsor and regulatory authority. So navigating an ECTD is far more easier than navigating through the paper-based common technical documents. It's globally used. The ECTD is utilized worldwide by regulatory agencies, including the FDA, EMA, and others, ensuring consistent submission practice across border. Okay, same five structure as ECTD used in as CTD is in all documents are submitted as PDF file organized in different folders. So the the folder structure, the file naming, the what kind of folder structure and file naming should be followed, they're all written down as specific guidelines, and while doing the ECT submission, those guidelines needs to be followed in order to make sure that the submissions are harmonized and there are no discrepancies between different regions. Right, I will show you the file format, file naming, and the folder structure that is done before submitting an ECTD. So yeah, again, all documents are submitted as PDF files organized in folders. eCTD uses an XML backbone to define structure, metadata, and version control. So when you finally submit an eCTD application, a XML file is being generated, which is submitted to the regulatory body for review, not the individual PDF files. Okay, so there is a portal where you submit all your documents, and then you publish that entire common technical document to generate an XML backbone. That XML backbone is further being submitted to the regulatory body. But the format of submitting the XML backbone also varies. For example, in FDA and EMA, when you're submitting a dossier, you also have to submit working documents. We'll talk about what working documents are later. But yes, working documents needs to be submitted when we talk about FDA and EMA. But when we talk about GCC regions, SAFRA, there is no need for submitting a working document. Only an XML backbone is sufficient for reviewing purpose. So yeah, that's a lot of things. Format, it will allow you to hyperlink the document, so the navigation from one document to another document becomes very easy, saves a lot on time also, and review. It also supports lifecycle management, new submissions, updates, or any amendment that's been made, any variation that has been filed. So you can keep a track of all the variations, all the new updates that are being done with respect to a certain molecule or a certain application that is being submitted to the FDA. Okay. So, ECTD status is ECTD is mandatory for all applications that you're submitting to US, Europe, like in Australia. It's been mandated since 2021, and who CTD, it has yet to adopt to the ECTD model. So yeah, the emerging countries or the raw markets, they are still, adapting to the eCTD format. But yes, CTD is widely accepted there as well. Okay. So these are, advantages and structure of the eCTD. Just go through it once. If you have any questions so far, just drop them in the chat box. We'll take them up in the towards the end of the class. I hope the difference between a ECTD and a CTD is clear to you all. And if asked to differentiate between what a CTD and ECTD is, I hope you'll all be able to answer that very well. So I've given you an overview of what ECTD and CTD is, how they're different, how ECTD has improved the regulatory submissions, etc., and how there are yet countries who need to adapt to the ECTD format. But most of the stringent bodies have adapted to the ECTD. Now we'll talk about understanding the regulatory requirements and the key steps in dossier preparation. Okay. So what is CTD? CTD is basically a type of format in which a dossier is being submitted. Okay. So how is a dossier prepared? Let's talk about that. First, what you have to do is you have to determine the target markets and regulatory pathways based on the drug classification and therapeutic indication. Um, Take for example, you have to submit an INDA application or an NDA application. You have to understand what class of drug it is. If it is a biologics, if it is a oncology drug or it is a diabetic drug, you have to understand what kind of drug that is and the therapeutic indication that the drug has. Okay. Understanding submission requirement for each region is also very important while identifying the regulatory requirements. Then, once that is done, you move towards your non-clinical studies. You perform your non-clinical studies, you submit the animal safety, pharmacokinetics, and toxicology along with human clinical trial data, phase 1 to phase 3, to demonstrate safety and efficacy. For an oncology drug, take for example, you need to make sure that the drug shows significant survival rate improvements. Obviously, an oncology drug cannot cure cancer entirely, but when that drug has been developed, you need to make sure that the endpoint is the survival rate improvements. Okay. Then you have to provide details on the manufacturing processes, drug substance, product stability, and quality control measures, ensuring consistent drug properties and safety profile. Then you have to prepare and draft the label that includes indication, dosage form, administrative instructions, and safety warnings to ensure clear communication of product usage. And finally, you have to complete all the required forms like FDA Form 356H for NDA accurately. To include, you also have to include the necessary certifications like GMP certificate, manufacturing authorization, environmental risk assessment report, or PSUR, etc. All these documents need to be submitted when you are submitting a dossier or you are preparing a dossier. Okay, so this is an example of dossier preparation. Uh, we have talked about two types of applications: an NDA application and a biologics license application. In new drug application, a comprehensive application for FDA approval of a new molecule drug consisting of 5 key modules detailing regulatory forms, quality summaries, chemistry data, toxicology reports, and clinical trial results needs to be submitted. In FDA form, you have to include 356H and prescribing information that are required for regulatory submissions. In module 2, you will have to summarize quality data, including non-clinical and clinical summaries that provide insights into the drug safety and efficacy. In module 3, details on the formulation, manufacturing processes, and stability studies crucial for ensuring product quality and consistency needs to be submitted. In fourth, you have to submit your preclinical toxicology reports, and in five, you have to submit your clinical trial data. But when we talk about biologics license application, a structured application of FDA approval of biologics, including detailed information across all the 5 modules need to be submitted, like regulatory forms, overall summary of biologics, the CMC information, immunogenicity and pharmacology data is important when you're submitting a biologics application, and lastly, clinical efficacy and safety data. Okay, so this is how you prepare a dossier. This is an overview of how a dossier is being prepared. Okay, so these are your key takeaways on what ECTD and CTD are. Just go through it once, and then we will take up module one individually and talk about all the documents that are being submitted in module one. Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes to read through this. If you have questions, ask them in the chat box. If not, we'll move towards module one. After we've discussed module one, then we can, differentiate between how FDA's module one differs from TGA's module one, so that we have a live example of how both of them are different, how it is region specific, or different regions have different module one requirements. So yes, once you've mastered the, art of module one, module 3 to 5 is almost similar for all the regions. There are no differences in module 3 to 5. So, module 1 is where your communication, your technical knowledge of all the documents comes into force. So, you need to understand module 1 very precisely, so that when you move towards module 3 to module 5, you don't have to worry about module 1 because you've already mastered that, right? So, okay, let's move towards module. Let's talk about module 1 now. I'll just share my screen once again. Okay, before moving with module 1, just go through this introduction to CTD once again, and then we will start with module 1 so that you understand what I'm talking about. Discuss what this triangle is about before moving towards module 1. So, as you can see, the top of the triangle says regional administrative information. It is not the part of the CTD. Uh, Not the part of the CTD means that it is region specific, and the other modules of the CTD are not region specific. They remain same throughout different regions. Okay. So yeah, and then there is your module 2, and then there's your module 3, 4, and 5. Module 2 is basically your quality overall summary, non-clinical overview, non-clinical summary, clinical overview, and clinical summary. So this data is basically summarized from the data that we are submitting in module 3, 4, and 5, right? So module 3, 4, 5 remains same for all the regions, but module 1 differs because it's region specific. Okay, so this is your CTT triangle for a better understanding and overview of what we are going to talk about. Why module 1 is very important, because if you know how a module 3 to module 5 is being submitted in one region, you are good to go for all other regions. But for module 1, you have to continuously read the guidelines, read the module 1 requirements of the specific, region, the regulatory requirements for that region. You need to keep yourself updated with all the module requirements as per the region. Okay, so let's move to module 1. Just a second. Okay, read this once and then we will start. It's nothing, we've just summarized everything that we've discussed so far. Okay, so let's start with module 1. I hope everything so far is clear to everyone. Module 1 is your administrative and prescribing information. It is not harmonized by ICH, meaning it varies between countries and region. While CTD modules 2 to 5 are globally standardized, module 1 must comply with the local regulatory authorities requirement. Okay? Module 1 will provide administrative, legal, and regional specific information required by the authority reviewing the submission. It will include essential items like application form, cover letters, product labeling, patient certification, environmental assessments, table of content, etc. Forms for it forms the entry point for the entire application. Improper completion may lead to rejection and delay. If your module 1 is not up to date, is if it is not meeting the regulatory requirement, then your application can get rejected without even moving to module 2 to module 5, right? So we need to make sure that the module 1 is appropriate, is region specific, and meets all the requirements laid down by the regulatory body. Okay? So the typical structure of module 1 is the first document that is being submitted is a cover letter. A cover letter serves as an introduction to the submission. It should succinctly summarize the purpose of the application, highlight key point of interest, and provide a brief overview of the attached documentation, thereby facilitating the review process. Okay. So in a cover letter, you will have a signed document introducing the application, which will clearly state the purpose of the submission. That is, if you're submitting an NDA, ANDA, BLA, or a generic application. It will also include the product name, active ingredient, submission type, if it's an original submission, if it's a variation or a supplement. You will also have to write your application ID and contact details of the applicant and the agent. Okay, so that is the role of a cover letter. Then the second document that you need to submit is your application form. Okay, application form is a critical component of the submission process, containing essential details of the applicant and the drug product being proposed. This includes information such as the applicant's name, contact information, and a comprehensive overview of the product's intended use and formulation. Okay, for example, in US, when you're submitting an application to US FDA, you have to fill FDA Form 356H for application to market a new drug or biologics, FDA Form 1571 for IND submissions, FDA Form 3674 for certification of compliance with clinical trial database. When we talk about TGA, Australia, then there's an application form which is for prescription medicine application form, and there is an AMDF letter of access which is for drug master file. If API is sourced externally, you need to have a letter of access to access the API's data. And then in Europe, you have to fill an application form which is available on the UDRA website, on the EMA website. It's called EAF, which means electronic application form. And next one, so that kind of application form needs to be submitted when you're submitting an application to Europe. Okay. Then the next thing that comes is your administrative information. So it includes various declarations and certificates, like patent certifications. In US, you have to submit paragraph 4 certifications for the generic submissions. In Australia, you have to submit a patent certification form under Therapeutic Goods Act. Then there is a financial certification and disclosure. I have shown you that form in our last session. You can download that form from the FDA's website, financial certificate and disclosure form. It's only submitted to the FDA to for disclosure of any financial interest between sponsor and the investigator. There is a department certificate for FDA. Apart from these, the main certificate that needs to go in module 1 is your GMP certificates, which is evidence of good manufacturing practice compliance and is often required for manufacturers and API suppliers. Apart from that, there needs to be a letter of authorization which is submitted for reference to drug master file or third party data. Then you have to submit your product labeling. Okay. In product labeling, there is your summary of the drug product, there is your prescribing information, there is your carton and container labels, and there is a package insert. Okay. So when we talk about summary of the drug product, this section will include a comprehensive summary of the drug product detailing its pharmacological properties, clinical data, and any relevant research findings. I'll just show you an example of how an SMP With the SMPC, I'll also tell you how to browse an SMPC on a, on a country's website. So feel free to write down the steps. So see, when you look at this page, I have opened the national registers for authorized medicine in Europe. Okay. So these are all the European member states, and these are all the respective medical medicine registers. Okay. So let's talk about Germany. Okay. So when you open Germany's medicinal register, this is what it looks like. Okay, so this is your drug information system. You go to the research, and this page will open up. You accept and continue to research. Uh, because I know of a medicine which is registered in Germany with a Germany company, I'll just take that example. So we've written Crayon 10,000, which is a drug product name and not an API name. Okay, for Crayon, the API is pancreatin. Okay, so if we can't find Crayon 10,000 in drug name, we can always put pancreatin here and then we'll start our search. Okay, so as you can see, there is no documents related to Crayon 10,000, right? So we go back and we do our search again and we put Crayon 10,000. So now you can see here there are three crayons that are registered. Will Okay, maybe we can try using pancreatin because I don't see. Okay, so we can select the type of information that we are submitting. This is your, let's say, drug name, and we search it. Uh, I want to show you the perfect example. Just give me a minute here. Let's try crayon, just crayon, and start our search. Okay, good. We have crayon 35,000 and crayon 20,000. So let's just open that. Here you'll see all the information related to that drug product. Okay, the drug name, the number of active ingredients, the dosage form, everything. If the version status is current, is if it's marketed, if it's not marketed, everything related to that drug product is available on the website uh, because the marketing authorization holder of this drug is, I'll show you. See, here is the marketing authorization holder, Abbott Laboratories, Germany. Okay. So, since MAH is Germany, the data related to that drug product is available on this BFARM website. When you go down, document, additional documents. Okay. So, technical information. When we go to technical information, this is your approved text versions for specialist information. German. This is in German language, okay? So this SMPC needs to be submitted when you're submitting your module 1 documentation. Okay. So it contains all the pharmacology, pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, and everything along with the marketing authorization holder's name. When was the last time it got revised, which is this date. So this is what an SM looks. This is German. If I find an English SMPC somewhere, I'll show it to you in the next class. But for now, stick words. Your SMPC, and then there is a PI, okay, product information, which looks like this. This is your product information, okay. How should the product be, administered? All the information related to product administration, side effects, everything is given here, and these two documents need to be submitted in your module 1 documentation, okay. I hope that is clear. These are all in German. Okay, and apart from that, there's also SRMMAP, summary of risk monitoring action plan here. You can browse through a lot of different types of documents on the agency's website. You go to this. There are a lot of all the European member states sites are available here. Germany, Netherlands, Italy, France, all of them. So yes, that's how you That's how you read through all the module 1 documents that are required. Matlab, this SMPC, the labels and the package inserts, all of them are given there. Okay. Apart from that, there's also information specific to region. For example, in US, we need to submit a US agent letter, user fee cover sheet, and risk evaluation and mitigation strategy, which is also referred to as REMS. In TGA, we have to submit an ARTG application reference, a sponsor declaration form, and justification for any deviation form guidelines. So all these documents, what are these documents? What they look like? It can be browsed to through the regulatory body's website. You will get a better understanding of what the document looks like, what are these documents that I'm referring to, because there's not just one document that is being submitted. Okay, with region, there are thousands and hundreds of documents that differ from region to region, and every time you're submitting a module 1 specific to a certain region, you need to brush up your knowledge about that region specific requirements, and then process the documents. Apart from these, there is also an environmental assessment report which needs to be submitted in US. There's risk management plan which addresses known and potential risks of the product and includes plan for minimizing and monitoring risk post approval. Then there's electronic submission form. With this section contains the technical components needed for ECDD submission, which will include your XML backbone files and validation results. Okay. So you cannot submit any incorrect or incomplete form, because if there is any incomplete form or application found, your application will be rejected at the validation stage. Then there's labeling non-compliance. So you can't, delay the submission just because you have multiple revisions. If there is a revision that can, happen later at a later stage, you submit your documents without that revision, and you can submit your revision later on as an addition or a revision to the initially submitted application. Then there shouldn't be any missing certifications. If there is a missing certification, you'll get a deficiency letter from the regulatory body stating that the deficiency has been found, and then you will have to justify why the document was not submitted along with the entire dossier, and when it can be available or when it can be submitted, etc. There shouldn't be a wrong regional format. Like I told you, module 1 is specific to region, so you have to adhere to the region specific format and submit the module 1 documentation in that format only. If there is any non acceptance or a wrong regional format, there will be rejection from the regulatory body. And lastly, when you're submitting an electronic common technical document, we get to hyperlink a lot of documents inside the PDFs. Okay, so there shouldn't be any improper hyperlinking of metadata in ECTT documents. Otherwise, there will be technical validation failure and the document and your dossier will get rejected. Right? So these are all your documents of module 1. When you'll read more about module 1, so I'll again show you one more. Okay, so this is a guideline providing regulatory submission in electronic format, certain pharmaceutical product applications and related submissions using the ECTD specifications. Okay, so if you go through this guideline in your spare time, you will understand the different, uh, different requirements and different guidelines that needs to be followed while submitting an ECTD application. Okay, just a second. And there are a lot of references here. So if you want to go through those references like ICH Electronic Common Technical Document Specification, you can search this and read about it. I have downloaded this M4QR1 guideline for you as well. We will talk about M4QR1 2 when we move towards module 2 because this talks only about module 2, module 3 quality guidelines. See, you can find these guidelines easily on US FDA website. You can just take a snapshot of the guidelines name and search them in your browsers and you will easily access this guideline. It's not difficult to find the guidelines, especially for the stringent regulatory bodies. The only hardship you'll face when looking for guidelines is when you are, looking for guidelines for raw markets who who regions, for example, SAFRA or GCC market like Saudi or sorry, not Saudi, like Kuwait, Oman, all these places. But for stringent market, all the guidelines are easily available, visible. You don't have to struggle a lot. You just write down your guideline name and the guideline will pop up. Okay. Also, I'll ask the CLIMAT team to share this with you if it's possible. So yeah, that will do. Okay, so that is it for module 1 documentation. If you have acha, okay, apart we have to discuss about the regulatory variations in FDA versus TGA. So okay, let's do that as well. Okay, you can just write down the, differences between the FDA versus TGA. It's just an example for you to understand what or how the module 1 submission is different in different for different agencies. So in FDA, there is a FDA form 356H, but in TGA, there's just an TGA application form. Then in labeling, for FDA, there is a SPL in XML format. Now, what is SPL? It's a structured program labeling, which is entirely different topic to be discussed about, but just remember that the labeling is submitted in an SPL format, but in TGA there's just PDF and mockups are accepted. For patent, paragraph 4 certification is required for FDA, and for TGA there's patent certification under Australian law. Then RAMS is submitted, risk evaluation mitigation. Yeah, the screen is not visible because this is just something that I'm explaining to you as an example. If you want, I can share the PDF with you in the next class. So just take notes of the differences that I'm talking about related to FDA and TGA. If you want, I can go through them again from the start. Okay? Right, so let's talk about the differences again. The first thing, the application form that needs to be submitted. In FDA, we submit a form 356H, while in TGA, we are just submitting an application form. For labeling, we submit SPL in XML format for US FDA, but in TGA, we are just submitting an FDA mockups. Okay. I'll try to, show you the mockups and the SPL in the next class if possible. But right now, just take notes of what I'm saying so that if you have questions regarding that, you can just, ask them in the next class. So I have an idea ki yes, we need to discuss that as well. Then there's patent certification. Paragraph 4 certification is submitted for FDA and patent certification under Australian law is submitted for TGA. Then REMS is submitted to FDA and RMP, risk management plan, is submitted to TGA in European format. Okay, European format RMP is accepted for TGA as well. And when you're submitting these documents, there's an FDA ESG gateway for submitting documents for FDA. And in TGA, you have e-submission gateway, TGA e-submission gateway, where you will be submitting these documents. Okay. There's also a structure. So when we will cover all the all modules, we will uh, we will discuss of how the structure of a common technical document or an electronic common technical document looks when we are submitting those documents on on a certain software, right? So this is it for from my side regarding module 1 today. We will take up module 2 in the next class. If you have any questions, please write them down because I know it's a very extensive topic to be discussed. There might be a lot of things that need more explanation. So if there's anything, just write them down and